Hello, good evening and welcome to Business Live. Coming up in this bulletin, government to push for extension of Free Trade Pact AGOA with US following President Trump's intention not to extend the deal when it expires in September this year. What's the position of the Association of Ghana Industries? We shall be finding out shortly. Also in this bulletin, Bank of Ghana reminds financial institutions any fees and charges not disclosed to the borrower will be deemed as null and void. How important is this caution? We shall be discussing that. Plus, only 37% of businesses in Ghana accept and use digital payments for various transactional needs.
The number of firms that engage in digital payments, and we've realized that the majority of the firms are small firms rather than large firms. Female-owned enterprises tend to do better.
We've got details of this and more for you. Please stay on. I truly appreciate your time. I am Pius Kojobaka. And looking at our stories, government has indicated that it will push for the extension of the Free Trade Pact AGOA with the U.S. in the coming weeks. It follows revelations that all products exported to the U.S. under AGOA will attract 10% tax. President Donald Trump has signaled its intention not to extend the deal when it expires in September this year. Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Agribusiness, Samson Ahi, says this is to ensure that the country does not face serious trade disruptions in the coming months. And we want to explore this further. Let's get onto Zoom and speak with the Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana Industries, Seth Chumakwabwa, to get some response on these issues. Pleasure you could join me, sir, on Business Live, and good to have you. What do you make of this action by Donald Trump on the 10% tariff and, of course, now AGOA?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I think it's an unfortunate development. Would have loved this hadn't happened, but then it has happened. Initially, when the issue of the tariffs came up, we believe that because we have AGOA, and AGOA was a treaty passed by the Congress, and therefore it was such an important treaty that it wasn't going to be affected by any executive order. So we thought that products under AGOA would be exempted. Indeed, between 6,000 to 7,000 products comes under AGOA. And therefore, we were very strong in our belief that once AGOA is not going to be affected, then Ghanaian products will not be affected and it will not have that much effect. Unfortunately, the statement you had yesterday, after the Foreign Affairs Minister visited the US ambassador to Ghana, became clear that AGOA is also affected. And for that reason, all products under AGOA that Ghanaians are exporting duty-free, quota-free to the US market are going to be affected. So it's really of concern because these products are going to attract tariffs of 10%. What it means is that it's going to make the price of these products higher. And when it's higher, then it has implications. Indeed, if it was that the competing countries in the US market, because they all have similar tariff hikes, it wouldn't have affected us that much. But here we are. Some of these products, especially if you take the garments, for example, they are being produced heavily in America itself. And therefore, when you raise the tariffs on Ghanaian products, Ghanaian exports, it means that Ghanaian products are going to be relatively more expensive before the tariff came in, and therefore it's less competitive in the American market. Several other products will also be affected. So it definitely has an effect, but there's a way to go around it. And I think as we discuss, we'll see the best way forward, but it has an effect.
And I'll be coming to your proposals to see the best way forward. But as it stands now, government says they are pushing for an extension of AGOA to avoid trade disruptions. And I think this should be of great respite to you.
We'll be very happy with that. And we are happy with the effort government is making, because I remember when His Excellency, the US President, came up with a policy, he also mentioned that their doors are open for further discussion. So I think on bilateral basis, countries can discuss with the US government and push their individual agenda. So I'm happy that government of Ghana has taken the steps to say we are also going to negotiate and push our agenda to get some relief for Ghanaian industries that are exporting there. So that is indeed a good thing. And we pray that they succeed in that. And I'm sure if they push very strongly, we should succeed in that arrangement. And once we succeed and we get the AGOA reinstated, then we will not have much problem. We are aware that AGOA itself was supposed to be ending in September this year. And there have already been discussions as to getting it extended for another 10 years. So we were hoping that by September it will be extended. With this development, AGOA doesn't come in, because once you slap 10%, then it means the whole idea of duty-free, quota-free exports to the US market is gone. So let's hope that we succeed in this arrangement and get the AGOA extended for another 10 years or so. Then this measure by the tariff hikes will not affect Ghanaian products that much, except products that are outside AGOA. But I believe most of the Ghanaian products that are exported are part of AGOA. So if we get AGOA extended, then that would be great, Ghanaian companies.
But from the association's perspective, Mr. Akwawa, what do you think should be the concrete steps that ought to be taken to ensure that we sustain the AGOA, like you are saying?
Well, I think that there are various things we should be doing. Some of them we should have done yesterday, and that is creating a conducive environment for industries to thrive. If you are producing at a very competitive prices, if your cost of production is lower, you become competitive in the market. If you are buying electricity at 12, 15 cents per kilowatt hour, whereas your counterparts in China are buying it at 4 cents per kilowatt hour, if you are paying interest rates of 30 to 35% on monies you borrow from the banks, all this add to the cost of production and cost of doing business. And when your cost of doing business is high, your price will be high. So when the tariff is slapped on it, it becomes even more expensive. So the way out is that, how do we create conducive environment? How do we ensure that Ghanaian companies are able to produce at competitive price? When we do that, our product becomes very competitive in every market. And in that sense, you diversify your market portfolios. You don't only go to the US. I know Ghanaian products are not only exported to the US, but you can deepen your market arrangement in other countries. So Europe, the rest of Africa, Asia, and the rest, if your products are competitive, good quality, good packaging, you can get market in all these areas, so that your portfolio or the amount of goods you are sending to the US market, even if it's affected, others will compensate for it. So for me, the best solution is that let's look at other markets. But in doing so, let's look at ways of making production costs lower. And that's where you become competitive in those markets. Otherwise, it's just, if you just pay a lip service to it and you don't get your products produced at a cheaper price, a cheaper cost and a cheaper price, you are not competitive. Once you are competitive, anywhere in the world, your goods can go there. And then if one door is shut, others will be open for you. So for me, that is the best way to deal with this.
Let me get your thoughts on this. The finance minister has given a directive that local industries should be given the opportunity when it comes to contracts. And I don't know whether you've seen this and what you make of that as well.
Well, as a matter of fact, it was our visit to the finance minister last week that statement was made. So it was made in presence of AGOA, and there's an assurance the finance minister gave. And indeed, this is not the first time they said. Actually, when reading the budget, the finance minister made a similar admonition that indeed they are going to use government procurement as a strategy to push made in Ghana products. And we think this is a brilliant thing, except that we've heard it before. So if it's been said again, it's very welcome, and we would help finance minister achieve that objective.
Seth Chumakwawa.
As we say, the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. So really making that effort to let it happen would be great. But he gave us every assurance. And we also gave him the assurance that we would identify, we have the products that we think we have excess capacity or adequate capacity to produce and fill the Ghanaian market. Very well. So let's work with those products and make sure we do so. And then when government is procuring, it also means that we look at the procurement law that requires us to use made in Ghana products as a major chip for bargaining or for negotiating for government procurement. So if you do so, then we are all in good stead to promote made in Ghana products.
Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana's Industry, Seth Chumakwawa, thanks so much for your input this very moment. I truly appreciate it. Let's move on to some other stories. Only 37% of Ghanaian businesses in the country accept and use digital payments. This was revealed in a report by the Real Finance Distribution and the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE. The report showed that businesses in the agricultural sector had the lowest rate of adoption and usage. More in this report.
The report further revealed that despite merchant account payment driving greater business growth, most firms using digital payment rely on costly personal mobile money accounts. Larger firms tend to diversify their adoption and usage of digital payment, while smaller firms use the costlier payment methods. Here is Professor Peter Korti.
We've seen the number of firms that engage in digital payments, and we've realized that the majority of the firms are small firms rather than large firms. Female-owned enterprises tend to do better, but then they do better when the firms are actually owned by men, by males. But when they manage, when females manage, they tend to do better. Unfortunately, adoption by females tend to be lower. And in fact, there's also a spatial dimension across the globe. We've seen as low as 7% in Kenya, and in Ethiopia, Egypt and other places tends to be slightly higher. So we need to encourage females to use digital payments. There are a number of reasons why adoption is low.
On this part, Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunication, Engineer Dr. Ken Ashigbe, said the Chamber will continue to invest in education within the fintech space.
Well, that is something that we will continue to do and intensify that, now using a lot of the data that we have to drive the way that it ought to be done. And then we also would work together with Bank of Ghana, the Ministry of Finance and various partners using this data to be able to target the way the education should go.
Female managers, according to the report, significantly boost revenue and merchant account adoption and usage. Digital payment adoption and usage is highly uneven, concentrated in Greater Accra and regional capitals. James Echen's report for Joy Business.
Still watching Business Live. We have more stories for you after this break. Hello again. The Bank of Ghana has reminded all financial institutions that any fees and charges that are not disclosed to the borrower should be deemed as null and void. This was contained in a new guideline on financial literacy on responsible borrowing. My colleague George Yafe has been going through the report and joins me in studio to fill us in with all that we know. George, and first off, give us the basis for this notice.
So the Bank of Ghana over the years have had to deal with challenges where people would complain that I signed up for this loan only to realize that I'm being asked to pay this, that I didn't sign. So the Bank of Ghana believes that it should actually go or do things to empower the borrowers for them to appreciate what goes into securing a loan. And that is why they've actually put out this notice, which is not new, but just try to remind borrowers that these are the ABCs of contracting a loan, XYZs of post-contraction of a loan, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And also to remind these financial institutions that these are your obligations to these borrowers when they come or approach you for that credit or that loan.
All right, so what are the highlights of the report?
Well, if you go through the report, basically, if you look at the if you go through it, shopping for the best rate from a commercial bank. Now, considering a loan offer, pay particular attention to the interest rate being quoted. So often, ask the per annum, is that annual rate over the past 12 months. So look out for the annual percentage rate, that is the APR, which represents the total cost, including the interest on the annual basis, fees and charges. So this is actually what you actually pay to that commercial bank and not what they might advertise officially as the base rate. And also obtain and compare loan offers from multiple lenders. So you've gone to a bank A, take your time, go to bank B, C, look at these numbers and do a comparison for an individual. If you're in a space, what are you going to be asked to pay? Also, the bit about disclosure as well. Interest rate of a credit facility indicating whether it's fixed or variable. Very, very critical because often people don't know that it was actually a variable rate. So as things get bad, the cedi depreciates, inflation goes up, you may have to pay more. Whether it was a fixed rate. Also, we talked about the annual percentage rate as well and other charges such as commissions, administrative costs, processing fees, and all those things. And often, people don't pay attention to the detail, and they end up complaining as well. So repayment schedule as well is very, very critical. What is the schedule for payment of that loan as well? And also, late payment penalties. So if you're supposed to make a payment every 3 months and you fail to pay, what are the penalties? The Bank of Ghana is insisting that all these things must be made known to the borrower.
All right, so what happens to the banks if they fail to comply with this very directive?
So the bit about the disclosure of these fees and charges, the Bank of Ghana is saying that if you fail to do that, these fees and charges that are not disclosed to the borrower in the loan agreement will be considered as null and void. Absolutely. So imagine that you've gone for a facility about maybe $10,000 and maybe there are other charges. If you make this complaint to the Bank of Ghana, they will move in and step in and see these charges as null and void. Also, that lender, be that financial institution, will be required to refund all those fees and charges already paid by you. Or if you've gone for that loan, you paid some amount of money already, the Bank of Ghana is going to insist that refund all those charges. Also, that financial service provider will be required to fully disclose all the fees and charges on a loan to you in a loan agreement. So basically, the Bank of Ghana is also saying that after asking you to refund all these things, they would also move to sanction that financial institution. Could be a financial charge, or as worse, if it's realized that this institution is maybe recalcitrant and have done these things over the years, withdrawal of license or that particular service would not be out of place.
Certainly, George. Grateful you could join me in studio with all the details in relation to this very subject matter. But let's shift focus to this story. And President John Mahama is pushing for resumption of all stalled projects in the country financed by the Czech Republic. Ghana has also signed a bilateral air service agreement with the country, which could lead to scheduled commercial flights between the two countries. President Mahama announced this at a joint news conference with the President of Czech Republic.
Our two countries share a deep respect for democratic values and governance and human rights, and by nurturing these shared principles, we can engage in fruitful dialogue, exchange best practices, and foster mutual understanding. In our bilateral discussions this afternoon, we acknowledge the cordial and long-standing relations that have existed between Ghana and the Czech Republic, which date back to 1961, when we opened diplomatic missions in our respective countries, and have been reinforced over the decades through the exchange of high-level visits and opening of resident missions in our capitals. We also signed a Memorandum of Understanding on Political Consultation, a bilateral air services agreement, also known as Air Transport Agreement between Ghana and the Czech Republic. It is our hope that the implementation of these MOUs will reinvigorate and spearhead cooperation in various sectors between our two countries. In addition, we discussed the need to expand the frontiers of our relations and cooperation with the Czech Republic, both at the bilateral and multilateral levels. At the bilateral level, note was taken of potential for trade and economic cooperation. I'll therefore urge the private sectors of the two countries to come together to explore possible avenues for cooperation in various sectors of the Ghanaian economy.
Talking about the Ghanaian economy, government spending for last year, including various areas of expenditure and other commitments, has emerged as a significant concern for the IMF. These issues have been a focal point during the ongoing fourth review program. Georgia Afi tells us more.
Concerns by the IMF are coming at a time that provisional estimates have shown that Ghana missed out on most of these major indicators under the IMF program ending December 2024. The development has resulted in some pressure being put on government through the Auditor General to audit these numbers for last year. This is to help the IMF appreciate the areas that these monies were spent by government and whether it can be identified as cash or on commitment basis, and the impact of these developments on Ghana's total debt stock going forward. We understand that the Auditor General should finish his work in 6 weeks' time. That will still be enough to help the staff of the fund go to its board in terms of the progress made by Ghana under the IMF program. There are strong indications that Ghana may secure some waivers to help the country get that staff-level agreement during this fourth review engagement that should end on April 15, 2025.
The Ghana Revenue Authority has surpassed its target for the first quarter of the year, achieving 41 billion cedis, exceeding the set goal of 36 billion cedis. Acting Commissioner General Anthony Sapong highlighted that the authority is implementing strategic measures, including expanding the tax base to incorporate the informal sector, particularly in the Ashanti region. He made these remarks following a familiarization visit to several tax service centers in Kumasi.
Delegation from the headquarters of the Ghana Revenue Authority, led by its Commissioner General, is on a working visit to the Ashanti region. The meeting is part of efforts streamlined by the management to familiarize with operations of the various collection points under the authority. In 2024, the Ghana Revenue Authority exceeded its revenue targets by mobilizing 153.5 billion cedis. The authority in the first quarter of 2025 has made a significant increase over its set target of 36 billion cedis. Anthony Sapong is the Commissioner General of the GRA.
I say that the entire first quarter performance for the whole country was impressive, and for Ashanti region, they exceeded the target that we gave to them. And I've already mentioned to them that that is the beginning. And I do want to expect that, as they have done in the first quarter, they also deliver on the remaining quarter towards the entire national target. For the first quarter, the budget gave us 36 billion, but I'm happy to announce that we recorded 41 billion for the first quarter.
The Ashanti region has over the years improved in revenue generation targets, with both the customs and domestic collection units exceeding their targets in 2024.
And that's how we part company here on Business Life. I am Pius Kojobaka. We have more for you when you log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Always a delight serving you. See you at 8 p.m. with Prime Business.